What happened to my voice? Actually, it's holding up pretty well, considering. See how far we get in this before I start to lose it. Really happy to see you all here and talk about this subject, which is really close to my heart. I'm MacDonald, and I have done a lot of different things in tech business. Most recently, founded App Camp for Girls, which is a nonprofit that mission is to get underrepresented people into the tech industry by teaching them how much fun it is to make iPhone apps. And just this year I joined up with Manton Reese, who launched Micro.blog, a new platform for short-form blogging with a social media layer there if you want it or if you don't. So you can just use it for blogging, or you can use it to interact with other people on other platforms. It's pretty cool. And if anybody is interested in Micro.blog that doesn't have an invite yet, see me after the talk. I have all the power at Micro.blog. Anyway, I want to go ahead and get started about this talk today. So this is the most personal talk I've ever given, or it will be when I'm finished. Because I've never admitted in such a public forum how much I hate to be criticized. When I hear the phrase constructive criticism, my brain goes immediately to, I suck. I've always sucked. I suck at this so bad I'm going to quit it now and do a new thing that I can do perfectly, so nobody ever criticizes me again. But over the years of working in various kinds of jobs and industries in the tech field, I have learned that I will never be perfect. And that's a good thing, because I am human and humans are not perfect. The things that we create are not perfect, and they're likely to be criticized by other people because they're not perfect. So instead of quitting things, I have developed a process over the years that helps me to deal with criticism and actually feel good about it. It's a really simple process, and it's become a habit for me. And I think it's really important to focus on that idea. It's a habit. It has to be a habit, this coping process, because otherwise the instincts that we as human beings have, that we're born with and we have no control over, will lead us to respond poorly to criticism when we are faced with it. So I want to do a little experiment, try to be scientific here, and just look at what happens to our bodies when we receive criticism, because you're going to find out that the brain is not the organ that most affects our ability to respond well. So let's test that out with a little experiment. Let's just take a minute and observe our own present state. So note your breath, which I'm finding this thin air is maybe a lot more conscious of my breath or lack thereof. So I'm just taking a breath, see where I am with that. Everybody's breathing, right? Look and see if any part of your body right now is holding tension. Don't try to deal with it, just noticing it. Really common areas are your jaw, your neck, pretty much always my neck. My hands, that's something I've noticed over the years when I get tense. They make little fists. And that action of making the fist makes me more tense, so I try to stretch those out too. And if you have an Apple Watch, which I do, or probably some other device can do this as well, but let's just have a look at our heart rate. Mine is going to be not very accurate average because I'm up here in front of people talking. So now, let's take a look at what happens to our bodies when we face criticism. When we perceive a threat, and criticism is a type of threat, adrenaline is pumped into our bloodstream. We don't make this happen intentionally, of course. Our adrenal glands react automatically, and blood flow is diverted from our brains to our extremities so we can do battle or run away. That's the fight or flight response. So I may not physically run away from my computer when I'm answering or reading support email, and hopefully you don't bash in your screen when some jerk makes a mean comment. But to our bodies, the threat is real. Our view of the world is being threatened, the view in which we are right, and anyone who doesn't agree with us is wrong. So thanks to adrenaline, the body is shifting blood to our legs when it's our brain that needs it the most. The brain has to be operating at peak efficiency to cope with criticism in a productive and healthy way. So, how are you feeling right now? I just find opening up the App Store to look at reviews, I pretty much stopped doing it when I was working at Smile back in the day, because those reviews just make my blood boil. So let's try it. Let's see what we can do to counteract that effect. So there's a self-assessment tool that I use when I'm feeling that adrenaline rush, that kind of threat causes, that threat to my sense that I'm right, is essentially what it is. But I want to give a little backstory, which is 20 years ago, I spent an extended stay in a mental hospital. So when I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder, I said this was going to be a personal talk. Besides the drugs, the staff there did their best to impart coping skills. Because you can imagine, if a healthy brain has a hard time dealing with this rush of adrenaline, imagine the challenge for someone whose brain is already throwing them curveballs. So one of the nurses in the hospital shared with me a strategy that I've relied on ever since, even long after the mental health crisis was over. And it's known as Halt. It's a pretty quick, it's a quick self-assessment, which is pretty well known in mental health, in the mental health profession. And you use it if you're feeling stressed and in a state of mind where you might make poor decisions. So you ask yourself 4 things. Am I hungry? Am I angry? Am I lonely? Or am I tired? So during the years that I've been working in tech, of course, I found myself iterating, noticing whenever I was losing my cool in response to something, and asking myself, what is really going on here that is making me behave this way or feel this way? So I'm still using the Halt method, but I refactored it a bit. And now I call it, it's my own method. It's called Halt. Same general idea. So am I hungry? This is so important. If I haven't eaten properly, my body's just not going to operate at peak efficiency or at any kind of optimal level. Not eating causes your blood sugar to drop, which causes serotonin levels in your brain to fluctuate. And thanks to the magic of science, we know that when serotonin levels are low, it makes it very difficult for the prefrontal cortex, so that part of the brain that controls emotional response to stress. So when I answer yes to the question, am I hungry? It is definitely time to step away from the computer and go get a snack. Preferably not Rice Krispies treats, but one high in protein and complex carbohydrates. So if you look in your swag bag, you will also find cashews and other healthy snacks. So the E for me stands, am I excited? I didn't used to associate excitement with anything negative, but I have noticed that I don't do my best work responding to criticism or really anything else if I'm excited about something. So an example of this would be, I get an email and someone has a complaint, and I know that I know the answer to their complaint. I have it right here. I get excited. I start typing it. But the fact is, if I'm too excited, I might not actually read their email very carefully. And I see they made one comment in the beginning, and I'm like so excited that I know the answer, and I go, but I almost want to say, you're welcome, send it off and get back an email and say, well, yeah, that wasn't actually my question. My question was that thing, in the next paragraph. So being excited, I don't try to tone it down personally. I think generally it's a good thing, but when I'm trying to do something that requires brain work, once again, like taking a breath, noticing where I'm tense, slowing things down, and really paying attention and focusing on what's in front of me. So the A, like in Halt, that stands for angry. Anger is just an impediment in general to responding appropriately and constructively. People talk metaphorically about being in the grip of anger. I feel it palpably. I can just feel that I'm stuck. I try to take a deep breath. I say, okay, take a deep breath, count to 10, whatever. I'm still that person. They just don't know what they're talking about. That anger that I feel is when somebody's been sarcastic or dismissive or just misguided. And sometimes I'll just start typing because I think, well, I need to use this energy and it will really help me answer this person better. And it's good to really be genuine about this feeling that I'm having. It's almost never good to be genuine about anger in a support email. However, so what I do instead of, if I can't get up and just walk away for a bit and just calm down if I'm really angry, I don't write my support emails in Zendesk, or I don't write them in my email program. If I'm feeling this way, I open up a text editor, any text editor, so that I can write the email, but there's no send button. I can always copy it into an email before I send it, but just putting a little distance between me and send is a great idea, has worked well for me. R, am I rushed? This is one I've noticed a lot lately with myself, which is I can attribute a lot of screw-ups now to being rushed, and to feeling rushed, I should say, because it's not like I need to rush, but something in my brain says to me, oh yes, you must get that hotel key, and you must go complain about this, and then get to your room, and I've done something, this is just, in general, it's not even criticism except of myself, which is, you didn't properly close up your computer bag, and your computer fell out, and that wasn't good, and it was only because you were rushing for no good reason. There's hardly any case where I need to respond to somebody immediately. And so I asked myself, why am I trying to get this done as if there is a deadline? And maybe put it aside, or again, use some of the steps of slowing down your system and counteracting the adrenaline. Finally, the last letter, same as in Halt, tired. When I was a freelance web designer, I used to create websites from start to finish by myself. It was something you could do in those days because people really didn't want a shopping cart. They didn't even know what a shopping cart was. They didn't know what any kind of interaction was. They just wanted some pages with their stuff on it. And I really liked doing that. And I would do it until late at night. I'd say, oh, I can finish this site and ship it out. And eventually I had to make a rule for myself, which is no FTP after 10 p.m. Because invariably I'll overlook some detail that I would have missed. I would have never missed if I had a good night's sleep. And there's nothing worse than putting something out there, then going to sleep, and then waking up 8 hours later and realizing you did something really stupid. So your internal clock may be set differently from mine, but you know what those times are when you are tired and you don't do your best work then, and you don't respond well to stress or criticism. So check yourself. Hungry, excited, angry, rushed, tired. Once you've dealt with those 5 points, you're in a good frame of mind. I'm in a good frame of mind for responding to criticism. So let's take a look at that support cue. When a task has the potential to raise my adrenaline level, I like to break it down in a methodical way. Making categories is a way for me to cope with something, helps me break things down. And the mental work of categorization actually helps shift blood back up to your brain, because you're giving your brain a task and your body says, oh, we need some blood up there. We're not going to run away like we thought we were. So I'm going to go through a few categories. It's by no means exhaustive, and I'm sure we could together come up with some more categories, or feel free to contact me later and give suggestions, because I think it's once something's in a category, it becomes one step removed from you and lets you be a little bit more objective dealing with it. So the first one I just want to get out of the way right away: personal attacks. there's always going to be these people who send messages that are vulgar, they're threatening, they're defamation of character of some sort, or my favorite, the triple hat trick, vulgar, threatening, and defaming. And it is tempting to ignore messages like this. And I don't have a problem with, sometimes just saying, oh, forget them, or more likely, them. Screw this, I don't have time for people like this. However, if you can moderate your adrenaline and take a couple of deep breaths, there is a good approach that I learned from my colleague and friend at Smile, Greg Scown, who handled, in the beginning, all this customer support for Smile back in the day. And Greg's approach, and the one that everyone in customer support now at Smile takes, is first answer the question as if it was not a nasty email. So whatever it was that you would say, go ahead and answer that way. But you can close with further emails containing vulgarity will not receive replies. And it's an amazing little bit of adulting right here because it's not being aggressive, it's stating a fact, it's something that person needs to know. And it acknowledges that person in a way that they probably weren't expecting. That you actually read their email, you read it so well, you're telling them you better clean up your act. And when people feel like they're heard and acknowledge, that tends to result in better quality interactions when it comes to criticism. Now, most of the people who write that trash are not going to reform, but you never know. And I've put up here, this is a suggested snippet. So a snippet is, to me, something I use in TextExpander, which is a Smile product. And probably everybody is familiar with TextExpander or something like TextExpander. Of course, that's closest to me, close to my heart, and also in my head. I know how to use it well, so I'm a diehard TextExpander user, but creating a sentence, putting it as a snippet, takes you even one more step away from the mess that was going on in that email, because you just got some short abbreviation, and that will pop into their email, and you send it off, and you didn't even have to touch it. And at the end of this talk, by the way, Smile generously gave me a year subscription to give out to one lucky person in this group, and I'll have more details about that in the end. So those nasty emails, just answer and move on. The second level of nasty, it's not as nasty, but it tends to be almost as pointless, is arguing with people about pricing. And I mean, everybody who's had to go through this, and I've had to go through it a lot, you spend a lot of time and consideration and thought figuring out how you're going to do a paid upgrade, or maybe you're going to switch to a subscription service. Nobody appreciates it. Almost nobody says, yay, we want to pay you again, or we want to pay you every month. Now, you're not greedy, you're not deceptive, you just want to convince that customer to hear your side of the story and why you had to raise your prices or change your pricing model, but you'll never succeed. If somebody doesn't like your pricing, they're not your target customer. So it's not really worth getting into a back and forth over the pricing with them. But it is still important to acknowledge that you heard what they had to say. You don't agree with them, adulting again. I don't agree with you. I am actually sorry to lose you as a customer. Again, it's a snippet, just put it in and move on. Another class of emails that tend to be full of criticism are the ones from people who think customer support never works. I call this the pre-existing frustration with customer support category. Every problem that you have seems worse when you're in the grip of anger, as I said. So I really sympathize with people who are fed up with customer support, because You know, I know that feeling I get when I hear, press 1 to get some 9 other non-useful options, and then press this number, and then, like, how about just, could I talk to somebody? Because I'm quite sure there's not a thing in this phone tree that will help me. You can see I'm already getting annoyed at phone trees, and I'm not even on one. Same thing with like those emails you get from companies. You asked a question, they put you in their support queue, and then they said, but maybe one of these FAQs will help you. And I think there's probably like this 0.01% of people who said, oh my God, they answered my question. Everybody else is like, they're never going to answer my question. They don't get it, they don't understand. If they had just read the email, they could have answered it in one sentence. So anyway, again, I'm getting mad at those imaginary customer support systems that make us mad. So what's happening is, of course, people who have been through those systems, then they come to you, and you have a thing that says support@mycompany.com. You know, send us your tech support questions here, and you think, yeah, this is never going to work. They're never going to answer me, and you're already mad, and you don't even know that customer doesn't even know you, but they're mad at you because you are in that tribe of people who exist just to make you mad. I think that again, kind of like when you're faced with somebody who's really nasty, very often this pre-existing frustration just results in an email that is sometimes sarcastic, or it's already more angry. They're more angry about what their question is about than it's really warranted. But that anger is making them sound like they're feeling very aggressive. Just, in your mind, dial it back to, what if they weren't angry? What is the question they have here? And also, again, acknowledging that you hear them, and you're sorry, because for whatever reason, your app caused them some frustration. And maybe it is not your fault personally or your company's fault, but you don't want that to happen. So let people know, like, you care about the experience that they're having with your product. And the funny thing is, once somebody gets an email, you know, it's like this, and like actually answers the question, doesn't just sound like a form letter, doesn't send them 10 FAQs that aren't really the answer to their question, and they realize that an actual human being read their email and answered them, they are surprised. And you might be surprised, but you'll get an email back where somebody said, like, thank you, and I'm sorry that I was so annoyed with you before. I didn't realize that anybody would actually answer my question. I've seen this more than once. All right. So this is a category of criticism that, especially on the App Store and app reviews, you see, and it's criticism based on not understanding the app or not understanding how to do something. The user complains about something that the app doesn't have, and they're wrong. Of course, we don't jump all over them for missing something, but we can just reply and say, hey, by the way, our app does support that thing that you think it doesn't. Thank you for getting in touch. Again, you know, acknowledging that people are taking time from their day to help you with your product, even though you are also helping them. So that might be the end of the misunderstanding category, except sometimes misunderstandings are not misunderstandings exactly at all. I mean, the user could technically be wrong and still be right. This is a review from one of my favorite apps called Forest. It's a productivity tool that keeps you from getting distracted by your iPhone. It's #1 in productivity paid apps, which is impressive because it doesn't do very much, but what it does well. So I'd read this. If I were the developer of Forest, I'd read this. This comes right from their App Store review, and say, uh-oh, flashing. Why are you doing that? And so this app needs to have a way to view the forest for a time frame longer than 1 day. I'd be like, yes, it does. Yay. I'm going to email them and say, yes, here, go tap this, and you'll find this view, and yes, we do that, and you'd send that off, and you'd be wrong, because you'd go down a little further in the queue and see, I wish I could see my forest for over a month instead. Okay, what's going on here? I will give them 5 stars if you could view a large forest. Like, well, you can. That's excitement. That's like getting you away from the issue, which is apparently something in your user interface needs looking at. And it might not be an easy fix. It probably is not an easy fix. Actually, in forest, I don't know what I would do if I were them, but the fact is that people are giving you constructive criticism and they don't even know it. They're telling you something about your user interface and your user experience that you need, and maybe it's time for you to make changes. Of course, you're not going to sit down and make those changes or even necessarily get into a big discussion about what changes should be made. But what I think that when you get this kind of criticism, it's really worth responding in a way that validates that person's point of view. Because if you just write back and say, hey, you missed it, you might kind of make them feel dumb when they shouldn't feel dumb. I would actually go as far as saying, give them first of all the instructions, in this case to see the forest in more than one day view, but also to say, like, you're not the first person who has had this question, and we'll be looking at ways to make it more obvious to find this view. And maybe add some user customization. So I really do appreciate that you took the time to let us know what you think. So their criticism, while it's not on target, helped you identify something you need to fix. Validate that customer, if you validate that customer's dissatisfaction, they're going to be on your team now to help you, as you move forward and improve your user interface, or not. One of the things that I have noticed, and it certainly was something that I used to feel like, is that if I acknowledge something is wrong, or if I acknowledge that the user has a good idea for a feature, I might be setting up the expectation that I'm going to fix it, or it's going to get, something will happen. But it's not a promise. It's okay to say, we're going to look at that. And don't worry about, oh, now I have to make a priority because we said we would look at that, You don't have to try not to hold back. Some of that a positive back and forth comes from you being transparent with the user about their criticisms. So I want to switch gears a little bit here and just talk about a little bit more about TextExpander, because one of the things about TextExpander that people worry about is that if you have a lot of pre-written canned responses that you can easily enter with a touch of a finger, won't that make your emails seem like they're just coming from a robot, And one of the things somebody said at one point about TextExpander is this designer who, I forget, now I can't remember his name, but lots of followers, which at the time I was like, oh, that's exciting, said, TextExpander actually makes it possible for me to be more personal in my emails because it saves me time on the things that don't really need to be personal, and that opens up the time to be able to interact on a more custom, personal level with people who email me. Plus, it gives me more time to write more emails. So I just have a couple of basic principles about how to use TextExpander or another shortcut tool and not be sounding like you are some kind of robot. And the most important one to me is, like, don't use multi-paragraph snippets. So a snippet is, just whatever's going to be inserted when you type your automatic, your shortcut code. Actually, as long as I'm talking about this, is anybody using TextExpander now in this group? Like not this second, but okay. I mean, it might be. What about other tools like TextExpander? Something that lets you not type everything over and over again? Oh, we should talk about that. So I don't want to assume too much knowledge about how these things work, but basically, you might have an email that says, thank you for contacting us. Here's paragraph 1 about that issue that they have, paragraph 2, how they could solve it with another product you have maybe, or and a closing, thank you, sincerely, whatever. Temptation is to put all of that into one snippet and then be able to insert that with one combination of keystrokes or shortcut abbreviations. And that's the problem with that is that, yes, then you will totally sound like a canned responder, because even if the person doesn't know exactly how you put that together, it's just going to feel like you've written it so it will cover lots of bases. And that will be clear. Even if they don't feel it consciously, the person who reads that realizes they're not actually talking to me. So my solution to this is don't build the whole letter as one snippet, but build in a few paragraphs that you use all the time, and then you might read somebody's email and say, okay, yeah, dear so-and-so, click, thank you for responding, click, putting in those first couple paragraphs, but then you realize the next paragraph really doesn't apply to them, so you don't put it in. You have, so if it takes you like 3 or 4 separate snippets to compose an email, support email, that's costing you maybe like 15 seconds, 30 seconds extra in time, but it gives you a chance to kind of slow down and make sure you're responding correctly and not glossing over their problems. Another thing, it seems like not a big deal, but it is, personalizing. Okay, don't know, oh, I think I know. Now I think I know what's going on. I have to test it. No? Okay, never mind. So in TextExpander, it's possible to have a blank field in your response that when you, so let's say it's my email, let's say I use a abbreviation, bugfix, B-U-G-F-I-X, and it opens up a little window, and the first thing I see is like, hi, blank. And right there, I'm going to type that person's name in. If I know what their name is, I'm going to type it in. And everybody knows that you don't know that person personally. The person reads it and says, like, I know they did that with some kind of automation. Certainly when you get mass market emails that say, hi, or dear Jean, from Amazon, I know that nobody sat there and typed Jean. They'd have ways of doing that. But people read that. It does something to your brain that you do feel like, hey, they're listening to me. So don't skip that, even if it seems a little bit trivial or cynical to use automation to respond to somebody by name. And then another thing that I do, there's a way, and I'll show you in the screenshot, of customizing a paragraph altogether. So you can have a default paragraph that you can change around before you actually insert it into the email. And I like to do this with the closing paragraph, because by the time I've read their email and put in my answer, I might have something more personal to add to their question or their problem, whether it's factual or it's something that at least acknowledges the emotions that they have behind it. So this is what it looks like when I type bug fix. I mean, this is not a real email. At least those are the steps for something, but this is just an example. So up at the top, that's where I've made a field that's called customer name. So I can see right there that the cursor is going to be in that field, and I can just type in their name. And probably like just typing in their name yourself makes a little connection in your mind to this is a human being, this is their name. So the bug fix steps, the workaround, that's not gonna, no point in trying to customize that. But then at the end, something, to close the email. If it's somebody who's really bothered, I might say, I apologize for the frustration that this bug has caused you. But some people aren't really bothered. It was just a criticism that they had. I might change that to, thank you so much for letting us know that you were having this problem. This helps us. Something, but just seeing that, or I could do nothing. So there's a default answer in there. And if I click OK, it'll just go in the way it is. But that just gives me one more step away from being totally automated. It gives me one last chance to look and say, am I in tune with the person who's writing to me? Am I responding to them appropriately? So to wrap up, like I said, we are going to have a little contest. Well, it's not a contest because I'm not going to judge or criticize your answers. I am going to, anybody who tweets with this hashtag by the end of the, let's say, by dinner time today, so end of the sessions today, I will take them all, I will randomize them and pick one person to get a fantastic one-year subscription to TextExpander. It is really helpful, and with that subscription you get it on your Mac plus your devices. And anyway, I don't have to sell TextExpander, it kind of sells itself, and it's not my job anymore to do so. But what I'd like you to tweet is just, if you have a little formula or phrase that you like to use to disarm people who are mad at you or who are afraid or frustrated or whatever. Or just say hi. Tell me your favorite, you can tell me which guinea pig you like better. That's also a valid answer because not everybody feels like tweeting their personal responses to other people. That's Grace, she's the orange one, Ada, the orange and brown one. And I thank you so much for listening to this talk and being here. Like I said, it was personal for me, and I couldn't really think of any way to make it less personal because this is the kind of stuff that makes us human, and responding to criticism as a human being is way better than as a raging, crazy person. With that, if anybody has any questions, I think we have we have like 2 more minutes. Yeah, I have time for like 1 or 2 questions. Yes?
Would you say that most of the time in that paradigm that you're mostly excited or angry?
Me personally?
I guess in general.
I mean, as it really would, I think most people are angry or tired. They don't realize it. Hungry. I mean, actually, you'd be surprised. You're almost always hungry after the hard work of keyboarding all day. But excited is really when I think something is exciting and it's good, and then I realize, oh, I need to back off of this because I'm writing too much. I'm too excited I have so many answers I want to tell this person, and they really don't need all that. Just me give them the basic TextExpander snippet. But yeah, Rushed is the one that I added most recently because of the great MacBook Pro falling out of the bag debacle, where I was like, that was totally avoidable, and I should notice when I'm rushing. And, what about you? Do you think there's anything you find particularly if you want to share?
I guess sometimes it can be disheartening.
Disheartening.
Yeah, so I'm not sure how that fits.
Yeah.
Per se, but when you see an onslaught of bad reviews.
Oh, bad reviews. Yeah, that's a good one. It's the original formula has lonely in there, and that's really important especially for people who are going through this terrible life, shattering experience and tend to be isolated from other people. And I tend not to be lonely, and I haven't been lonely in a long time, but I think it's a similar thing. It's you're feeling kind of lonely. It's all those people are out there criticizing you, and you're all just yourself, right? Interesting point. Anything else? Yeah.
Yeah, how to respond? Well, you will describe more like the criticism about your work, but how do you respond to somebody who is criticizing your personality?
The question is, how do you respond? This is mostly about work or your product. Like, how do you respond to criticism about your personality? I guess I don't. It goes back to like people responding completely inappropriately to a price change by calling you an asshole or whatever. I don't know. What's an example of a personality trait somebody that I ought to respond to? Like if people say I talk too much, I would take that, and you know, I would have to be in the right circumstances. But I would say I would respond. Always respond with taking a breath first. I think there's no harm slowing down and taking a breath and noticing whether something is pushing one of your buttons, because man, those buttons are the problem. I have a phrase I go to very often, when I say, which is, I'm not really upset for the reason I think. That comes from Eckhart Tolle. He's a great writer on being mindful about stuff. And I said, I think I'm mad because that person said I talk too much or whatever, but I'm really, I'm upset because I care about that, you know, and what's really going on is I don't care if somebody thinks, if I don't know, why do I care? Maybe it's because I always let people, you know, judge me, and I take their judgments to heart, and maybe I need to work on that. So, does that help? A little?
A little.
It's hard, it's a big question. Let's talk about it one-on-one. I'm really curious about, because it's a good question. Well, I think we've got to wrap it up. Thank you again. So, just to, again, if you hashtag, well, let me go backwards. Backwards, no? Yes, it will. Go here. I just wanted to put that hashtag back up there. Hashtag best response. Maybe we'll start a movement with it. But at minimum, we will award one subscription to TextExpander by the end of the sessions today. So I would say by the end of Stump, because the sessions go on forever, and there's game jams that will be going on all night. So once Stump is over, I'll total them up. But hashtag best response. And I look forward to chatting with you or communicating with any of you about anything. And seriously, if you have any feedback for me, any criticism, this is a really good time to lay it on me, because I am really zen right now. But if it's not a good time, I will take the time to get zen before I respond. Thanks again.